Hello, everybody. I am NJ Sullivan, and recently I premiered an audiobook called Brimstone. And it's a really good audiobook. It's coming out soon. But at the premiere, I did a Q&A, and I got asked a lot of questions about where the voices come from, how I choose what voice I use for which character, what influences what those voices sound like. And I thought, that's a really interesting question, and it might not be something that people kind of understand about the process of doing voice work. So, just from my perspective, I am not a heavily experienced voice actor. I'm not Nolan North or Troy Baker by any stretch of the imagination. But I have been doing voice work for a few years now with my audiobooks and, other outlets. And I'd like to walk you through the characters in Brimstone, give you samples of their voices, and kind of an idea of my thinking behind why they sound the way they do. Because a big part of these characters is their voices. So, yeah, let's get into that. Now, before I get into the narrator, I want to talk a little bit about my setup. It's very, very simple. For Brimstone, I use this mic, which is a Shure SM58 that I've had for over 30 years. It's kind of my workhorse mic. I do have other mics to choose from. I also have, just handy, this Aston Origin, which is a very, very clean studio quality, professional studio quality mic. But it was a little too clean. It was a little too crisp, a little too clear. It didn't have the tonal quality that I was looking for Brimstone. So I decided to go with the old workhorse, the SM58 stage mic, because I thought it felt better. The tone that it created fit the story better. So just on a hardware level, that was my thinking there. And now let's talk about the narrator. The narrator is the first voice you hear listening to the story. And the narrator's voice is very important because you hear it the most. The complication with Brimstone is that it's in first person. So how do I differentiate the narrator from Brimstone speaking, from dialogue lines? And the way I chose to do that was taking a little bit from Blade Runner. The way Deckard does the voiceover, like he's just relaying information, like he's talking into a dictaphone. He's just making notes. He's reading his files. So he has a little bit more of a lower tone, and he speaks a bit more plainly, and a bit more slowly, and a bit more level. And there isn't a lot of shifting going on. When I do the voice for Brimstone, he talks like this. And I got to that because I was doing a noir. And I've always been kind of fascinated with the voiceovers in noir because they always sound like somebody reading case notes. And that's what I wanted the narration for Brimstone to sound like. I wanted it to sound like he was reading his case notes. Just matter-of-factly. So that is how I decided to differentiate, giving Brimstone, when he speaks, normal dialogue tones, but when he's going through as the narrator, he's just speaking, he's just offering the information, he's just putting it out there for the world to hear. This is for the record. That kind of thing. I have a little bit of a thing going on right now with my allergies. So yeah, that's where the narrator's voice comes from. That very level, flat. I'm speaking this way because I just have to get all this out, and that's simple as that. This needs to be put into the official record. So this is how I'm doing it. So there's the narrator. The narrator is a pretty simple one. Moving on to the man himself, Brimstone. Now, you'll hear I say Brimstone a lot. And Brimstone's voice, that was pretty easy because he does a lot of talking. I felt like I should kind of do it in more of my own voice. But my own voice tends to be up here. When I'm actually speaking, I'm kind of this nasal sound. That's the voice I normally speak in. But it's only like one register of my real voice. It's kind of the more buffalo accent that I have naturally. And I wanted Brimstone to not really have that, so I brought it down a little bit, and he speaks here. Out of the nasal and down into the throat and more of the chest. And made him a little bit more snarky and kind of, whatever, about everything. And put the attitude into the tone of his voice. And that's can sometimes be hard to convey because you try to not dead read lines. One phrase you'll hear a lot from me if you watch any behind the scenes stuff is me saying the phrase, "Nice read, Velma." And that's me attacking myself for the jinkies kind of lines. And, kind of reminding myself that this is not an episode of Scooby-Doo. Even though I love Scooby-Doo. So yeah, Brimstone's voice is basically my voice, but pulled down out of the sinuses, out of the head, and into the throat. And I've got a little bit of that natural rasp. So when I pull down into my throat, it, vibrates the secondary, and there's a term for it, but the false vocal cords, the secondary folds. And I can get a little bit of that, and he can just kind of sound like he is so over this crap. Oh, I am so over all of this crap. And that's where Brimstone comes from. He's basically a snarky version of me in a slightly lower register. And once again, had to be careful not to be able to differentiate between his narrator voice and his dialogue voice. So he's not quite as low as he is when he's speaking the dialogue, and he doesn't speak as slowly as the narrator, or as dramatically as the narrator. He's more up here. He has more of a common speech, patterns, and flow, but he's got a little bit of attitude in it. He's done with you. But so there is Brimstone. There are the two Brimstone voices in this story, the narrator and his dialogue voice. So it's time to move on to the next one. Here comes a fun one, the Dame. The Dame is very hard because it's very difficult for someone with a baritone voice or even a tenor voice to sound feminine. To sound female, not even feminine, but female. So I knew going into it that I was not going to sound like a woman. I don't have the voice for that. My ability to control my voice doesn't include a natural sounding female. Oh man, a little bit of a thing, like I said. But I knew that even though I couldn't sound female, I could give the impression of a feminine voice. So the way I did that was bring the voice up. Now, she has her own attitude, and I tried to get that across. I'll get to that in a second. But instead of speaking down here, I brought my voice up into here, and I made it more airy so that the voice is basically coming out of the top of my mouth. And it's going over my tongue and through my front teeth. And she speaks like this. And it's as close as I can get to doing a proper female voice. And also, because of the kind of character she is, because of the person she is, she tends to speak emphatically when she speaks. She speaks with authority. Even though she's speaking in this much lighter tone, she's carrying a lot of authority and a lot of confidence in her words. There's a storm coming, Christopher Brimstone. And you don't have an umbrella. That's not actually the line. The line is, what is that line? Be careful, Christopher Brimstone. There's a storm coming, and you don't have an umbrella. So stuff like that. She speaks with authority, with confidence, but in this very light tone, as though she doesn't have to raise her voice. When she speaks, she will be heard. Also, I have a lot of mouth noise when I speak, especially when I speak in lighter tones, because I have to be a little bit closer to the mic to pull it out. And I have a lot of natural mouth noise, so I do have to do a decent amount of editing to get rid of the worst of that mouth noise, because it's clicks and pops and wet sounds, and it's ugly, and it's not good. So I do have to do a lot of that, especially when I'm doing her lines, and also when I was doing his Lordship's lines, and we're going to get to his Lordship soon. So that's the lady. The lady carries a lot of confidence and a very quiet voice, and she has kind of a nondescript accent. It might be European. It might be a mix. It might just be the way she speaks. But she definitely is from somewhere, and it's none of your business. So there's the dame. Well, let's move on to the next one, shall we? Okay, now we move on to one of my favorite characters to do voices for. He is a lot of fun, he's very boisterous, he's more effusive than the other voices I've shown you guys so far. And that is Dragomir Ivanovich. His name is Dragomir Ivanovich, and he talks like this. He's a bit Bela Lugosi, and that's intentional. 1, I cannot do a single European accent. I can't. I can do this weird pseudo-Russian, Italian, Bela Lugosi, creatures of the night, what music they make thing. So I decided, since he's kind of this larger-than-life character, that I would just go with this larger-than-life, almost cartoonish voice. I think, I fear, I know. It doesn't matter. You know, he speaks like this. He's got a voice. He talks like this. And his voice is very much in his head. But it's coming from here. It's down in his chest that it's coming from. But he speaks through his head. And that voice is so much fun to do. That character is so much fun to do. But I wanted him to sound like an old-timey movie vampire. Even though the character isn't a vampire. But I wanted him to have that quality of theatricality. To have that larger than life. That I am projecting to the back of the room. That kind of thing. So I went with that kind of pushing the line of over-the-top accent. And I had a lot of fun recording his lines, because I get done recording a section of Dragomir, and I would just giggle to myself that voice was coming out of me, and I am putting this into the world now, and you can't escape it. It exists. So that was fun. I had a lot of fun doing Dragomir. And once again, I wanted his accent. Not only can I not do a specific accent, but I kind of wanted it to be, even when I was originally writing it, I wanted it to be indeterminate as to where he's actually from. Because he is a man, he is a mystery. Big part of who he is as a character is he is older than the vampires, but he's kind of coy about who he is and where he's from, and what he is, and what he's been. So having him have this accent, that just sounds like he pulled it out of a Cracker Jack box. You know, he's a bit of a loud mystery. So I did that intentionally, because I felt that really suited the character to have this almost put on Eastern European accent, almost like he's playing it up. Because that is very much within his character. He is quite a dramatic gentleman. And being able to do that was an absolute blast. If they ever made a movie, that'd be the one character I'd ask if I could play. I would want to play Dragomir. Because you can just, hello, my friend, how are you? So, how are you, my friend? So, and also, yes, I do make those faces when I'm just by myself with no camera on me. My friend, how are you? It has been a very long time. And also, I often deliver the lines with my eyes closed. It just, somehow it's easier for me to get it right if I'm not looking at the words. It sounds less like I'm reading if I'm doing it without looking at the words. So there's a little, I guess, pro tip, at least for me. I don't know if it applies to anybody else or not, but anywho, that is where I get Dragomir. Dragomir speaks like this because Dragomir is both not life and larger than life, and possibly older. So, there's Dragomir, one of my favorites, and he's going to be fun in the next one too. Okay, now we move on to the Arbiter, a creature of indistinct species, great but unknown age, and just, he's a bit of an old man, and he speaks like he's a bit of an old man. I wanted to create, in the voice for this character, I wanted to create the idea that I wanted him to sound infirm, but also as though his vocal tones, his pitch, his delivery came from a far more formal time where inflection mattered more, where choosing your words carefully mattered more. And so his delivery, the voice is easy, it's just in here, and I give him the rolled R's, like a Londoner or like a posh British person, his ahs, he says ah, not R, or aw. So he gets the rolled R's, and he speaks like this, and I put a little bit of a shake in my throat and my jaw to get a bit of the weirdness of his infirm voice. So I can do that. And luckily, that's a voice that I can do without actually straining my throat very much. The original voice for the Arbiter was up here, and he spoke in this voice up here, and it's very hard because it's on your throat, and I'm just tearing out my vocal cords. That is not a good one. I don't like doing that one. And if you have to do any significant number of lines in that voice, at least for me, I will lose my voice. So I brought him down into the throat more and had him speak as though he had basically just gone over the edge. So I wanted to create this idea of this character who spoke very formally, but he was very frail. And also the way the other characters in the story, when he comes into it, interact with him, shows that he earned his place, that he is still somehow threatening, even given his great age and his physical frailty. So I wanted to kind of convey that this voice had seen some shit, basically. So I went with a voice that sounds like this, as though he was an old king, basically. So that's the Arbiter, and we're going to move on to the next one. Now we move on to a character who, when I voice him, I want to punch myself in the face. Not because I dislike him, but because I absolutely nailed what I was going for with this voice. And listening back to it during the premiere, I just wanted to slap him. And he is the representative of the vampire. I am the representative of the vampire. Oh, Lordship. Oh, dear. Oh. We will not stand for this. And I wanted him to sound a bit nasal and drag out the wrong parts of words, and almost a mixture of Dr. Frankenfurter and the posh guy from Family Guy. And he's just so overly confident. Yes. So I went with a voice that sounds, just absolutely condescending. And it is a mixture of Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show and the incredibly posh guy from Family Guy and some of Terry Pratchett's one specific Terry Pratchett character, in Thud, in the book Thud, and in the audiobook it's done brilliantly. There is a character who is the curator of the museum, and he has this accent, and he speaks very poshly. They've stolen the rascal. Exhibit. He has this way of speaking. Oh my God. Oh dear, no. But I wanted it to sound less like he was just kind of an oblivious posh person and more that he was just so blatantly arrogant. So I brought that voice up here. Oh dear. Oh, and I put some vocal fry in it. And he's supposed to sound Arbiter. He does not have a right to speak at this conclave. And just kind of like, ew, like his voice sounds greasy. And I love it because he's supposed to sound greasy. So, yeah, that is the representative for the vampire. Venerable Arbiter. But yeah, I just wanted him to sound oily. And just have a voice you want to slap. Because I don't have pictures, I can't show his face. So he can't have a face you want to slap. But he can have a voice you want to slap. So, that's what I went with. And now we're going to move on to the last character who appears in the story, who is actually the first character who appears in the story. He would say he's everywhere in the story. So, on to the next one. His Lordship. The Immutable Truth. The final answer to every question. And one of my favorite characters. His Lordship speaks like this. He speaks very clearly, and he projects every syllable. And I pulled him a bit from James Earl Jones, and a bit from Terry Pratchett's Death, and a bit from some people I've known in real life who I'm not going to name, who have this way of speaking where they're just basically on stage all the time. And I am the last thing you want to cross, vampire. And a bit of menace in his voice, gravitas, and authority, because he serves the highest law, the immutable truth from which none can escape. So yeah, he's a anthropomorphic personification of a universal truth. And he knows it. And he's fun. Although this voice does take a bit of a toll, because it's well below my natural speaking voice. I can do it, but I have to do it all at once. In a similar way that the original Arbiter's voice would mess up my vocal cords, pulling down that low for me can have a similar effect. Now, because I have had some vocal training, and my singing voice, is actually in the baritone range. It's a bit easier, but carrying off this kind of thing does, put a bit of a strain on it. So I have to be kind of careful. But I wanted him to speak very crisp. I wanted him to speak very clearly. I wanted to give him, just a touch of a sort of mid-Atlantic accent. Once again, because his voice comes from wherever he wants it to, including other places in the room. But I wanted a kind of a full accent. He would speak with an accent. And he enunciates. Because everything about him is very clear. And I have to convey that in a voice. There is no half steps for him. Everything is a right or a wrong, or an on or an off. So his diction is the same. He speaks because he's only going to say it once. And that's where his lordship's voice comes from. His voice is meant to symbolize what he is, and what he is an inescapable fact. So I had some fun coming up with that one. And I do have fun doing it, even though it's a little bit rougher on my throat than some of the other voices. I have a lot of fun. That kind of like, in the same way Dragomir is this big, bombastic, kind of scenery-chewing character. And the vampire is kind of a scenery chewer, and his lordship is kind of a scenery chewer, and they're fun. So I have a lot of fun doing it, and hopefully I'll get to do more of all three of them very soon. But yeah, those are the voices. Those are the voices of Brimstone. And we're going to sum up in a second here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking through where the voices came from and how I came up with them and how I tried to get them to work to convey things about the characters and about the world of the story. So, yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Brimstone is coming out soon. Because of the way distribution works, I can't give an exact date, even though I was told I could. That's a whole nother matter. That might be another video. But it is coming soon, and I'm really proud of it, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a really fun story. It's really, it's something new, and it's something new for me, too. So I hope you guys enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you want to support this channel, you can click the like button, you can click subscribe, and the Patreon link to support not just this channel, but Lantern Audio Works in general and everything we produce, including Brimstone. Become a patron. You get to listen to all of it early, you get behind the scenes information, you get private chat on Discord, there's all sorts of fun stuff with that. So, consider becoming a patron. If you can't, because you don't, have that much free cash at the moment, we get that. But you can like and subscribe. That's free. That's going to be all for now. And, consider liking and subscribing, commenting, sharing, and consider becoming a patron. Link is in the description. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.